Just when you think it's safe to go have a nice dinner on the town, it turns out it's not the virus that threatens to ruin your evening, or at least not that virus. Instead, it's the viral mindset infecting the hordes of the walking brain dead to go ruin the dinners of innocent customers and the businesses of innocent restaurants because somehow your steak or your margarita are causing systemic racism. It's the new trendy approach to turning people off to the cause, even more than invading highways and stopping people's commutes or burning down the neighborhood or just plain beating people silly. So maybe it's comparatively kind, actually. Maybe this is the softer, gentler Black Lives Matter, but in recent weeks, mobs have been storming restaurants, demanding fist-raising compliance and flipping tables and breaking glass and damaging the property and intimidating guests into forcible evacuation. Honestly, I'd rather take a Wuhan toilet licking tour than suffer any exposure to these people. They are what's actually going to kill the restaurant business. They're making Bill de Blasio blush. And if you think those scenes lack decency, it still gets worse. They'll even steal your beer. And I assume that's how this lady in Pittsburgh got that impressive beer gut. Just walk up, take it, chug it down, and mob on. Okay, well, you tell me exactly how many beers is fair trade for justice and peace then, because as far as I can tell, you could be given every keg in the country, you'd drink it all down and blame systemic racism for your alcohol poisoning. This isn't justice, it's just rationalized theft. But in fairness to the mob, the rationalizing is not exclusively theirs. If there's anything more shameful than their actions, it's those justifying and enabling them, particularly when those people are direct victims themselves. One of those scenes we just saw was a mob roaming Rochester, New York on Saturday night, disrupting dinner and vandalizing property at several restaurants in the city. Don't worry though, they're only here to ruin the place. They're not here to hurt you.
There's no need to run. Nobody's hurting y'all. We're shutting the party down. Nobody's gonna touch you. We're shutting your party down.
Just watch out for the flying chairs and the broken glass, because those could hurt you. But it gets worse still. If you're a patron at this restaurant, it's certainly unjust to be chased away from your table by this deranged mob, but it's flat out insulting to have the restaurant ownership throw you under the bus and support the mob instead. 3 of those ransacked Rochester restaurants issued nearly identical statements on Instagram that read, quote, "Despite what videos might depict, we lost some glassware last night. You cannot deny the anger and hurt our community is feeling right now. As always, the actions of a few agitators are amplified louder and louder as videos are shared and conclusions are drawn. We, now and always, stand with those standing against injustice." Despite what the videos show. No, not despite. What the videos show is, in fact, very important. This is a mob not standing for anything, just rampaging indiscriminately. And even if you think they oppose injustice, all that's being done here is additional injustice. 2 wrongs don't make a right is a child's moral lesson. And you don't even have the guts to hold these clowns to the standards we expect of toddlers. Worse still, even if you lack the basic courage to defend yourself, you're so cowardly you can't even stick up for your own customers, spending their hard-earned money to enjoy a simple dinner with you. If you want justice and a healthy restaurant business, this gutlessness is the quickest path to neither. It's an ends justify the means mentality. That is to say, as long as the ends are perceived to be noble or perceived to be truthful, in this case, anti-racism, then any and all means in pursuit are acceptable. The trouble is, when any means are acceptable, then any means will inevitably be used for any and all ends, noble or otherwise, truthful or otherwise. And then any means will inevitably come for you or any other innocent person in the way. That's no recipe for justice. That's just a recipe for more mob tyranny. And it's that same lack of courage and wisdom that is the basis for an op-ed in the Washington Post last week, from a woman at the center of another one of these viral clips. You may recall a few videos from the DC area a few weeks ago, incidents where the mob raided restaurants and bullied guests into raising the Black Lives Matter fist or be labeled a white supremacist. It's been happening throughout the summer. Many times people just roll their eyes and raise the fist so the mob will tire out and move on, but not always. Some people have in fact shown at least a little backbone, including Lauren Victor, the subject of one of these viral videos recorded on August 24th. And don't overlook the context that this outdoor dining is largely for coronavirus safety. You need good circulation while the mob is screaming their disease droplets into your face. But hey, at least they're wearing masks, right? If you're going out for a night of harassment and intimidation and bullying, just please do the right thing and mask up. But hey, good for Lauren, at least in this video. She stood her ground, or sat her ground in this case. She didn't submit, and she maintained her dignity, at least for that night. But apparently that public perception of courage was an intolerable distortion of the truth, and that's why Lauren has clarified in the Washington Post, no, I'm still gutless and submissive. I just had a momentary lapse in my surrender to the mob. Maybe that's a little harsh. She does have some criticism for the mob, but her piece is mostly one of placation under the title, I was the woman surrounded by noticeably pale Black Lives Matter protesters at a DC restaurant. Here's why I didn't raise my fist. And she makes explicitly clear, I wholeheartedly support the Black Lives Matter movement. I have marched repeatedly in the past several months in support of their cause. She may not have raised her fist that day, but she wastes no time in fulfilling mob demands this time around, paying her due respects to the newly christened patron saint of paralysis, Jacob Blake. She writes, first, let us not lose track of the underlying incident that led to the protest. Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back by a police officer in Kenosha. However you try to reconcile the conflicting accounts of the confrontation, 7 bullets in the back should not have happened. Well, even if we grant the premise that the shots shouldn't have happened, there were several easy ways for them not to happen. Things Jacob Blake could have not made happen that led to the shots that we're now supposed to mourn. The violation of the restraining order against him shouldn't have happened. The alleged sexual assault that is the basis for the restraining order shouldn't have happened. The resisting of a justified arrest for violating that restraining order, plus an outstanding felony warrant, shouldn't have happened. The continued resistance after tasing shouldn't have happened. The disobedience of police officers while walking to the car shouldn't have happened. The reaching inside the car against police orders shouldn't have happened. The knife recovered at the scene shouldn't have happened. And that's only a partial list, and none of these facts, by the way, are in any way disputed or in conflict, as Lauren writes. The only person with conflicting accounts is this author herself, because her initial premise is that righteous and justified outrage of the mob on behalf of Jacob Blake, and thus their actions are at least partially excusable or understandable. But her next premise is that these tactics are never acceptable. First, Jacob Blake is a near martyr for the cause, but second, she writes, it's never okay to coerce people's participation. That is just bullying. If you want my support, ask it of me freely. That's what we do in a democracy, or any free society that upholds and respects natural rights. Correct, but that's the trouble with this argument. She writes as though these premises are complementary or even compatible. They aren't, at least as they apply to this mob behavior. Either the cause is so righteous and inherently justified that any tactics in its pursuit are legitimate, or the cause is in fact secondary to the morality of the process by which it is implemented. In other words, either the means or the ends take priority, but you do have to pick one. She closes the piece trying to cram these conflicting premises together, saying, despite my fear, I scanned the crowd and felt great hope and appreciation too. Sure, it was a mob, but it was a mob working together to uphold Black people's civil rights, and there are worse ways to spend a Monday night. Well, yeah, I'm sure there are, like ODing on fentanyl or routinely physically assaulting a woman in her own home, but I'm told those are the actions of heroes. Regardless, mobbing around and violating the rights of other people is a pretty bad and immoral way to spend any night in pursuit of any cause. Because that's what you mean when you write bullying and coercion are never okay, Lauren. You mean that the morality of how you pursue your cause is actually more important than your cause itself, no matter how justified your cause may be. You mean that the ends do not justify the means. You mean that the means justify the ends. And as long as this Black Lives Matter thuggery continues, as long as Black Lives Matter operates in direct opposition to the moral truth you just described in absolute terms, as long as Black Lives Matter routinely does the things that you say are never okay, the rest of the flowery appeasement of this mob is irrelevant. Because if these tactics are never okay, then their actions are not to be rationalized or contextualized or qualified or justified even tacitly. They are to be condemned and mocked with a modified fist of your own flexed proudly in their responsibly masked faces. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it.